Hey guys, today we're going to be showing you how you can transfer your algae culture once it blooms. And so what does that mean? Essentially, algae, in an algae bioreactor, it grows, as it grows it goes greener and greener and greener. And when it gets to this point, it's called blooming, when it goes really, really green. And what happens here is that you need to actually, if you want to grow more and more algae, you need to actually transfer it into a new flask that has new food, essentially, because it'll run out of the food that's in there and it'll eventually die.
So, steps to do it. First things first, you have to make sure the environment you're in is sterile and clean. So give it a good wipe down with any cleaning products that you have at home, preferably ones with ethanol in them.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're also going to make sure that we have a clean flask prepared. So hand that one over, Charlie.
Yeah. So this is going to be our new Erlenmeyer flask for a new bioreactor. That's already been sterilized as well.
All clean and ready to go. And so before we do that, we have to make sure that we have our culture media. So in here we have all the nutrition for our algae to eat and consume and live and thrive in. And so we've got 2 clean bottles of waters here, so non-diluted, just from local supermarket.
In our previous video though, we show you how, in an older video when we're showing you how to make your first algae home, we show you how to make your stock solution or your media out of your stock solution, which is your algae food. So go back to check that one again if you want to refresh your memory on that. The other thing that we also have here for our new algae home is our magnetic spinner, just here. So we can see this work. If I turn the power up, that magnet will start to spin there. And then we also have our air pump.
So to get started, we have our glass here, well, our flask here, and we're going to need to fill this up with culture media by 2/3 full. So Charlie, do you want to do the honors and pour?
Sure. So just the thing as well with the amount you fill it up, generally what's really important for algae is their exposure to gas or air, gases in the air. Because algae, as you would know already, they rely on photosynthesis, which is converting carbon dioxide into oxygen along with sunlight. We've talked about photosynthesis before, but they need carbon dioxide, so they need exposure to the air. So generally, what we've got going on here is an air pump that's pushing in air and carbon dioxide so that the algae is exposed to more of those gases that it can use to grow. But in this circumstance, what we can actually do is when we have one of these gaskets, we can fill it up more. But if you don't have one of these where there's air coming in, then you'll have to fill it up less and grow less algae so that there's more area on the surface where the algae can be exposed to those gases that it needs. So we've wiped everything down. We're going to just take the little magnetic spinner and put it inside the flask like this. And then we'll just put it in the middle like that. Now very carefully, I'm going to pour, nice.
Just so we can see the measurements.
Very carefully, I might actually pick this up. We're going to just pour the culture media into the flask. Make sure the lids, the rims of the lids don't touch either. You can just see how the magnetic spinner can stir the water now. If we turn this up really high, ooh, starts freaking out actually a little bit. So there we go, we can start to see a vortex forming. If you ever are working with a magnetic spinner in the future, they're not included in the kits because we have the air pumps, which is another way of doing it. You actually don't want this happening. You don't want too much disturbance. You want enough that the algae doesn't settle, but you don't want this much because it'll sort of blend up your algae and the cells will kind of get ripped apart. Sort of because it looks a bit like a blender, doesn't it? We've filled up our Erlenmeyer flask by 2/3, and what we now need to do is add our algae in from this flask over here. So to do that, the proportion that you want to add, so how much algae you put into this flask determines how quickly it will grow. Because if we have like a very small amount, then it takes longer for those cells to divide and multiply. Whereas if there's a larger amount, if you have like 100 cells and all 100 of them divide, then you'll have 200 rather than starting with 1 cell. If it doubles, then you're at 2. So it's sort of exponential like that. So
you do need to make sure as well that you don't put too much, because then you're blooming 2 different blooms and there's not going to be enough nutrients for the algae to actually eat.
So now what we're going to do is we have another sterile flask over here which has a little measurement on it, and that's because we want to you want to not really go above 1/10. So if we've filled this up 900 milliliters, then we want about 90 milliliters of this stock solution just here. And this one is actually going to be called the parent, and this one's going to be called the daughter. because it's sort of like the same sample. Okay, so the way that we're going to do this is you can use a pipette, but that will take us a bit long. So we're just going to pour this very gently into this flask here. Chlorella, the algae in here is pretty tough, so it should be okay. And you can see that the algae is already like spreading around, and it's immediately changed the color of that water because we've got quite a healthy stock over here. But like we said earlier, if we leave that, it'll die. Yeah, and now what we can do is we can set up our gasket, which goes on top. Okay, so now we're going to show you how to set up a gasket if you have one of these setups, or how you just sort of set up your air pump. Yes. So on the top of our LMI flask, and you can do this with your own bioreactor if you want, is we've got 2 holes in the top of the lid, and that is so we can have one hole where air can be pumped in, and another hole where air can be pumped out. Air can get in and air can get out. This is our air pump over here. Nice flexible tube. You can just connect to the little front part nozzle of the air pump. And then what this is just going to do is you can either use cotton wool, because you kind of essentially want air to be able to get out of that second hole, but for nothing that's sort of in the air to be able to drop in. So what we have is just a little attachment that goes on the top, but you can also just use sterile cotton wool that you get from the chemist. And so now we've got air flowing in, we've got our algae moving around so it's exposed to all the nutrients, and then we'll put it in the sun. Alright guys, follow the instructions to go to the next video. And also please, if you have any questions, there's little question segments in here where you can ask us anything and we'll get back to you as soon as we can on that. Yeah, go citizen science.